15 World War II naval movies, submarines, mutinies, and disaster at sea. Which one has the craziest real-life action? I'm breaking down what's actually worth your time and what isn't. At the bottom, I've got We Dive at Dawn. It was filmed in 1942, right in the middle of the Battle of the Atlantic. It's a British submarine film that starts off with the crew on shore leave, but that doesn't last. Their leave gets cut short and they're rushed back out to hunt down the German battleship Brandenburg before it can slip into the heavily defended Baltic Sea. The movie starts out pretty slow and the style's a little stiff. There's no special effects to speak of. But it still works as a solid old-school submarine story. Sure, it's full of the submarine cliches we're used to now, but it actually came out before most of those were even a thing, so you kind of have to give it a pass. It's a good film for 1943. I just don't think it breaks out of its era, and in a crowded field of war movies, it doesn't really demand a spot at the top. Above us, the Waves looks at the British trying to deal with the threat of big German battleships during the war, especially the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz mostly sat in a Norwegian fjord, but just knowing it was there meant the Allies had to keep ships tied up watching it instead of using them somewhere else. After air bombing failed, Britain switched to using midget submarines. This was part of a real-life operation called Source Dot. The film doesn't follow the usual setup where you get a bunch of training and character backstory before the mission. Instead, more than half the movie is spent on the actual operation itself, sending these tiny submarines after the Tirpitz. The effects here are pretty basic, which doesn't help sell the whole underwater intrigue. The actual mission in real life had mixed results, lots of losses, but they did manage to put the Tirpitz out of action for almost a year. The film, though, kind of skips over that and just ends with the captured British crew being saluted by the German admiral. It's okay, but doesn't really dig in or elevate the material. This one is a solid submarine movie, technically. The special effects are strong, the sound design works, the music and editing keep things tense. Where it falls apart is the screenplay and its historical accuracy. You're supposed to believe a small crew of American sailors can jump onto a damaged German sub, take over, and somehow outsmart the entire German Navy. Even if you're up for a wild story, it's a stretch. The movie just ignores most of the real history. What actually happened would have made for a better film anyway, and probably just as tense. It also runs into the usual submarine movie pattern. There's torpedoes, diving, depth charges, waiting, everyone sweating over how deep they can go, over and over again. It's done well, but if you've seen any other submarine film, you've seen this structure before. This one is a straightforward war procedural from 1960. The British Navy is trying to hunt down the Bismarck, a German battleship that managed to break out of the Baltic and into the North Sea. If they leave it alone, it could wreck the shipping lanes across the Atlantic. The film follows the whole process, ships, planes, command rooms, step by step, showing how they tried to track the Bismarck and take it out. It's focused and pretty informative for what it is. The effects are dated and you can feel the limitations of the time, but it's still watchable if you're into naval history or war films. It's very much of its era, but it gets the job done. They Were Expendable is a John Ford project set in the Philippines in 1941. You've got Robert Montgomery and John Wayne as two Navy lieutenants trying to convince their admiral that motor torpedo boats actually matter. That's all before Pearl Harbor, which hits partway through the film, and then you get Japanese planes attacking their base in Manila. One of the best things here is how Ford uses real planes and boats for the action scenes. None of that stock war footage or obvious back projection you usually get in movies from this period. When the film goes for action, it looks legit. Most of the story follows the Battle of Bataan, focusing on the torpedo patrol boats, but the middle slows way down. They start talking about big battles happening, but you barely see anything on screen. There's a decent action finale, but then the movie drags out the ending for way too long. If it wasn't for a couple of solid action scenes, this would be pretty forgettable. Action in the North Atlantic came out right in the middle of World War II. It's basically a look at what life was like in the Merchant Marine Service. It's half adventure, half propaganda, all built around action set pieces. You'll spot the morale-boosting parts and some technical stuff that doesn't really hold up, but there's also some genuinely great moments, especially in the action. The movie opens with one of the best ship-sinking sequences ever put on film. An American tanker with Humphrey Bogart aboard takes 2 hits from a German sub and just goes up in flames. This isn't just a few shots of models or a fast montage. There's a full 10 minutes of fire stunts, real sets, and real people in the middle of chaos. The tension builds as guys try to rescue each other, get rafts in the water, and escape the burning ship. Even after they're in lifeboats, the fires spread onto the ocean, so you get this wild scene of a boat cutting through fire and even stuntmen swimming with their heads getting hit by flames. The scale, editing, and effects are all ambitious, and it's genuinely intense. Pretty much top tier for convoy movies until Greyhound came along in 2020. For anyone who grew up loving war movies, this is the kind of film you could watch over and over just for the action set pieces alone. I almost skipped Destination Tokyo. Didn't see it on many best submarine movies lists, and honestly I thought I was done with old school war films. Glad I stuck with it though. This turned out to be the most underrated submarine movie I've come across. It's set in 1942. You've got a submarine slipping out of San Francisco Bay getting secret orders. Turns out they're heading right into Tokyo Bay to gather intel for the Doolittle raid. What surprised me is just how much happens in this film. The opening builds up the crew, and you actually get to know everyone on board. In just 20 minutes, the movie sets up the culture, the personalities, and keeps the story moving. It's not just about characters. There's a whole lineup of suspense and drama, stuff you don't always get in other sub movies. A dud bomb drops on deck and someone has to try defusing it. They play an old audio message from a sailor's family after he's been killed. There's even an emergency appendix surgery, plus all the classic sub-movie stuff like sinking scenes and depth charges. There are some obvious propaganda bits, a few things that haven't aged well, but that's to be expected. The movie is less about big arcs and more about observing life on a sub, and it's grounded in a way most movies from that era just aren't. This one is set in 1943 on the USS Kane, a minesweeper that's basically falling apart. Everyone on board knows it, the crew, the officers, even the original captain. They're not exactly running a tight ship, but things change when the old captain is replaced by Humphrey Bogart as Captain Queeg. Queeg is strict, demanding, and just starts grinding everyone down. Pretty quickly, his personality flaws show up. He's dressing down officers in front of the crew, ignoring orders, getting rattled by minor things, obsessing over little details like a quart of stolen strawberries. It all adds up. The turning point comes during a typhoon. Queeg loses it, starts giving out conflicting orders, puts the ship at risk, and Executive Officer Merrick, played by Van Johnson, has to step in. He relieves Queeg of command, gets them through the storm, and then faces a court-martial for mutiny. He could hang for it. The last half hour is all courtroom drama. Every witness makes things look worse for Merrick. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the final sequences hit hard. Van Johnson is great here, playing the good guy with a little more depth than his earlier roles. Bogart, though, is unforgettable. If you've ever seen The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, you know how good he is at playing someone just falling apart. Queeg is right up there. The enemy below is your classic U.S. destroyer versus German submarine setup. Robert Mitchum plays the American captain. Kurt Jürgens is on the German side. It all takes place over about 24 hours, just back and forth, each side trying to outsmart the other. The submarine stuff, to be honest, looks a little corny now, but the destroyer scenes still hold up, especially when it comes to the depth charge explosions. Those are real, practical effects, and they look fantastic. The whole movie is just one big battle of wits, cat and mouse at sea. It's pretty standard submarine movie stuff. If you've watched a few of these, you know what you're getting. The story is basic, but told well. There are better movies in the genre, but you can definitely do a lot worse. This one opens with Clark Gable as a submarine commander whose boat gets sunk right at the start. He survives, but then he's stuck behind a desk for a year. Eventually, he gets another shot at command, and this time he's obsessed with going back to the same region and taking out the Japanese destroyer that sank him. The problem is he has to bend some rules and ignore part of his orders to make it happen. His second in command is Burt Lancaster, solid as always. Pretty soon, Lancaster figures out Gable's out for revenge, and it turns into a battle for control. The real core of the movie is this clash between the two leads. The art direction is strong, the action moves fast, and the story never gets stuck just showing off sub-combat. There's always something going on with the characters. It's one of the better submarine movies out there, but the ending comes together a little too easily. The conflict is solid, but it never really goes deeper than the basics. Loyalty versus revenge. Still a strong entry in the naval movies category. This movie covers a tight window, just 5 weeks of Admiral Halsey's service during World War II. It opens with him flying out to the South Pacific to see why things on Guadalcanal aren't going as planned. When he lands, he gets put in command, taking over from an admiral he actually admires. You get the sense Halsey isn't thrilled to be thrown into it, but he steps up, gathers the top generals, and gets to work. What sets this movie apart is the style. It's shot in black and white, and the whole thing is narrated like a documentary. It actually works. You keep track of who's who, what their backstory is, and why it matters. It's more about character, willpower, and strategy than it is about action. You can tell the movie wants to teach you what was at stake. But for all that, it does make a choice that not everyone will love. There are no battle scenes, not a single one, no stock footage, nothing. It keeps everything focused on what's happening in the meeting room, so you're always seeing the war from the general's point of view, never from the front lines. It's an interesting approach, probably saves money and maybe even makes sense for the story they wanted to tell, but the result feels a bit incomplete. It's still educational and well-made, just not as engaging as it could have been. This one begins right at the start of Pearl Harbor. It isn't just a combat film, though. It's a drama that follows the lives of a whole group of Navy characters, with the actual warfare as more of a backdrop. The script is strong, the dialogue feels natural, and you get that big mid-60s production quality. The cast is loaded. John Wayne plays Captain Rockwell Torrey. Patricia Neal plays Maggie, a tough Navy nurse, and honestly, she's so good in this I wish her part was bigger. Wayne is still Wayne, but he gets to play it more relaxed and thoughtful than usual. Kirk Douglas brings a ton of energy and attitude as always. The movie weaves the characters through Pearl Harbor and into a fictionalized campaign in the South Pacific, clearly meant to echo Guadalcanal. Underneath all the action, there's a cynical tone that runs through everything. You get political scheming, a shady congressman, and the film is blunt about subjects most war movies avoid, like assault, taking one's own life, all the fallout and baggage these characters are carrying. It ends with a big naval battle that wipes out more than a few central characters. Not everyone's going to connect with the drama and the relationships, but if you do, it really works. It's not a perfect movie, but it's one of the most honest war films from that era. For submarine movies, there's just nothing that beats The Boat, specifically the director's cut. That version runs about 3.5 hours and you feel every minute of it. The film follows the German U-boat crew on a mission during the Battle of the Atlantic in 1942. Their job is simple: find Allied ships, sink as many as they can. But what the movie really does is strip away any sense of adventure. This is as real and miserable as submarine life has ever looked on film. What stands out for me is how real the whole thing feels. The sets are claustrophobic. The crew actually acts and talks like people stuck in a metal tube for weeks, and you see exactly how they feel about the German army and the Nazis. There's this constant sense of pointlessness and dread hanging over everything. I called this the best submarine movie for better or worse, because honestly that commitment to realism makes it a rough watch sometimes. It's long. There are big moments like depth charges, storms, firing on ships, but instead of ramping up the intensity, the movie lets these scenes play out slowly, sometimes even tediously. It's a fine line between showing the grind and just being boring, and for me, The Boat crosses over into tedious a little too often to be a true classic. But if you want the most historically accurate look at life on a submarine, nothing comes close. At number 2, I got Greyhound, starring Tom Hanks as Captain Krause. It's based on C.S. Forrester's book, The Good Shepherd. The story is tight, just about 40 hours or so, following an Allied convoy crossing the Atlantic and getting hunted by a German submarine wolf pack. The big danger is this stretch in the middle of the ocean, no air cover, nothing but ships and U-boats. Hanks's character isn't just captaining his own ship, he's also coordinating the whole convoy and the destroyers protecting it. Once they're in the danger zone, the movie basically doesn't stop. Every decision is life or death, and the film is completely focused. There's no pointless romance subplots and no side stories. It's all about the pressure of being responsible for so many lives with barely any information to work from. There's a standout sequence in the middle of the film, 2 destroyers tracking and attacking a U-boat. Modern CGI helps pull it off. You get radar blips, sudden periscope sightings, then everything goes to hell. The Greyhound and another destroyer try to box in the U-boat with torpedoes and depth charges, and the tension is constant. The cat and mouse moves feel like something out of Master and Commander, just updated for World War II tech. The military dialogue is sharp, the visual effects keep you in the moment, and you really get a sense of what that kind of warfare must have felt like. It's easily the best submarine battle from a surface ship's perspective. The Cruel Sea is a bit of a hidden gem. It's based on the 1951 novel, and I'd call it the Master and Commander of World War II naval movies. The story stretches across several years, following life on a convoy escort ship during the Battle of the Atlantic. There's everything in bits, holding a convoy together in rough seas, picking up survivors, and hunting U-boats. For a film from 1953, it's surprisingly gritty and realistic. There's nothing sentimental here, the story feels like it came from real experience. One of the most brutal moments is when a U-boat hides under a group of survivors and the captain has to decide whether to attack and kill the men in the water or let the sub escape and risk his own crew. The movie is full of small, honest moments like that, and you get a real sense of the pressure and choices these crews faced. The Cruel Sea doesn't just show the action, it covers the whole life of the merchant navy and delivers the side of World War II you almost never see.